Very good evening to our viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight on the agenda. My name is Tyitende, your host. Tonight on the show we are joined by Dr. John Nakuta. He is a human rights lawyer and academic, also in the space of law, as well as Rui Tyitende, who is also a regular visitor to our platform. He is himself a political scientist and also an academic. We are here to unpack some of the things that have been happening lately in our country. Thank you, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have both of you. Welcome to the platform.
Thanks, Toyo, for the invitation.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's start with you, Rui. Your assessment of the first 100 days of the new administration. I think it happened around the 29th of June. So yeah, 100 days in.
Well, look, I've always been very reluctant to give an assessment or an analysis of a government that has only been in power for 100 days. Because if you want to do an analysis, a thorough analysis of a government, you need to look at the policy intentions and what they've been able to do over a particular period of time. So logically speaking, how can we really assess any substantive changes within a period of 100 days or even 300 days for that matter? So, but we can look at certain steps or actions that have been taken, the rhetoric at least, the announcements that have been made thus far, the appointment of governors, the cabinet composition, and then you will somehow have a sense at least of where the country might be heading to. But in terms of policy itself, it will be very difficult, because if you look at the campaign promises that President Ndaitwa has made, there are very specific things that she has mentioned. For example, she wants to construct 10,000 houses per year. She wants to create 250,000 jobs over her term, which only ends in 2029. So would it be fair to pass judgment on that already at this particular point in time? So I think it would be premature closure to do that. But nonetheless, there has also been a lot of noise from certain ministers, the likes of Samkwasa, the likes of the Minister of Health, for example. And I've had some questions, but I would like to hear what John also has to say about that.
Yeah, so John, the same question to you. What shape is this new administration seem to be taking, as far as, again, early days, but somehow the picture ought to be emerging now?
I totally agree with Rui that admittedly it's really unfair to want to pass judgment after only 100 days. And I'm not going to repeat what he said, but what the things that very much stands out strong for me is four things. One, it's very clear that the president is very strong on women empowerment. If you look at the cabinet composition, if you look at the number of ministers and so forth, one gets a sense that she really wants to make it a point to empower women. And that, for me, again, from a human rights perspective, is something that needs to be acknowledged, something that needs to be welcomed. But at the same time, I'm also saying that one must just remind those that are in power, the ruling elite, particularly the president, that women are not a homogeneous group. There are women that equally needs empowerment, those being in the rural areas, those that are living and residing in informal settlements. We've got women that are having disabilities. We are having women that from the indigenous communities. So when we talk about women empowerment, it is not just about those ones that are close to the powers that be, but really to be inclusive. For me, that would make sense. But on the point, as I'm saying, on that point, I think we need to welcome that. Then the other thing that I personally find very much refreshing and welcoming is her mantra of business unusual. And I think for me, that if that is really the point, that gone are those days that we would elect people and they would sit on the laurels and not do anything and just enjoy the glamour and whatever that goes with being a minister, being in a position of authority. Gone are those days, but we need to see things happening, something very tangible, and people want to see action and see change. I'm talking about the ordinary Namibian that would want to see change in that kind. And whilst on the point of business unusual, I personally want to remind the president that we've got laws that are in the offing. For example, for the past over a decade, Namibia is trying to legislate data protection legislation. Since 2013, up until today, we still do not have. We've got bills, data protection bills in various forms, but up until today, we do not have a Data Protection Act. In as much as all these things that are happening online and within the cyberspace are happening, where people's personal data and information ought to be protected, there's no movement. No. And we hear various reasons as to why the Data Protection Act is still not in its final form. And for me, business unusual would mean we would make something that's, and there's another piece of legislation equally important, especially for people in your space. The whistle protection. It's not even a bill anymore. It is an act, the Whistle Protector, Whistleblower Protection Act of 2017. It is still just in an act, but it is not being operationalized. And lastly, also still in the terms in the context of the law, we know that in December 2023 we have passed an equally important piece of legislation. Now, not even passed, promulgated an equally important piece of legislation, access to information. It talks about transparency, good governance and whatever, but these things are not implemented. So business as unusual for me would mean operationalize these pieces of legislation. Yeah. And lastly, my concern is the way decisions are taken. For me, it's like referring to the State of the Nation address, that the President announced free tertiary education. It was just an announcement, and I'm not going to mention them. I sat with a high official from UNAM where I am. It's like, and this person was saying, John, we have heard, like everyone else, during the State of the Nation, that as of next year, tertiary education would be free. So it appears that there was no meaningful participation, consultation about something as important as tertiary education. No feasibility study seemingly was done before the announcement, and only after the announcement a task force has been set up. Last week before I left for South Africa, I've listened to an interview on Desert Radio where a representative from Namcor was lamenting the fact that even the task force that has been set up does not make provision for student representative organizations. And for me, that is concerning.
Yeah, thank you, John. Rui, in our 100 days article that we did in Namibian Sun, we quoted you also raising the issues around the free tertiary education. I think, if I remember correctly, you were talking about the fact that it was this bold announcement, and later it was narrowed to some other specific fields of studies. If you can expand on what you thought at the time.
Well, look, when the president initially made the announcement, and I always like to take people back because we tend to suffer from selective amnesia in our body politic. Last year, the president also promised that the old pension grant will be increased to 3,000. And then the former Minister of Finance said, no, we are unable to accommodate that increase because of the fiscal space that we are in. So there's no talk of that anymore. But it was very clear, we are going to do it once I'm in power. She's now in power, it has not happened. 2, the issue of free tertiary education. I felt that when the President made that announcement during the State of the Nation address, I said, well, this is impressive. But I also know where I work that the university is having financial problems. John would know, sometimes we are paid late. We do not get our salary on time. We also know that institutions like NAST also, they are underfunded. Do not even talk about tertiary education. Go to secondary education, go to primary education, which is free. To what extent do our children have access to textbooks? To what extent are all of our children taught under proper educational social infrastructure? It's not happening. So I think the President psychologically was still on the campaign trail. She didn't consult, because you cannot make such a bold statement without having done the research, without having consulted with the various stakeholders, including those ones within various institutions of the state, because it has expectations. The moment you announce that, people were already saying, yeah, next year, law or politics, my parents, that burden will be relieved. You know, people are psychologically preparing already. Now we are told it's only special fields. What would those special fields entail? Would it
special
be,
to who in any case?
Special to who? I mean, would it be arts? Would it be space? Would it be nursing? What exactly? So I think it was premature to make that announcement, but maybe the President was still excited. You know, she's still in the infancy of a presidency. But that's a mistake that she should avoid in the future. She's governing a country with hopes and expectations, considering the various socio-economic challenges that we have.
Yeah. Let me kickstart another conversation which you touched on briefly, Rui, about this rhetoric by the likes of Minister Sankwesa, Veiko is speaking big time. Even in our 100 days analysis, those are some of the names, of course, including the Prime Minister, that sort of emerged from our analysts saying, look, these are the people who have sort of impressed or whatever. In the case of Sankwesa, there seems to be a pushback. People saying, I mean, we saw in Namibian Sun this week, the former mayor from Thea calling the minister a wannabe celebrity who prioritizes making himself famous rather than looking at what statutes say. Just your thoughts on some of those things that have emerged?
Well, look, Minister Sankwasa is known for always putting his foot on the ground. It's not the first time. Even when he was a Deputy Minister of Works.
Unorthodox guy.
Yes. Yeah. So that is his approach to conducting politics. Whether it works or not is a different question altogether. Yeah. But we should be guided by clear policies and laws in the way we conduct politics. Not grand posturing, not wanting to be seen to be working, but actually be working. Also the issue around politicians, and Sankwasa is not the only one. Minister, may his soul rest in peace, Abraham Yambo used to do the same, you know, going to schools, you know, surprise visits, I mean. And you would see the impression was to create, they wanted to create the impression that they are working, but I am actually more interested in results. Yeah. What are we attempting to achieve by doing these kind of activities? Maybe John can speak on the law itself, you know. What does the law say? The statutes. How does it relate to a minister executing his constitutional mandate to ensure service delivery? Visiting various local authorities where there are problems. Are you going to visit all of the local authorities in your 5 years? Or are there clear policy guidelines that clearly stipulate in terms of what needs to be done, instead of just this combative approach, you know, bashing each other in the public domain? Because the question is, who does it benefit in the end?
So John, to you, in the Omthia case, the issue here is a guy who is a councillor there. And then he gets a full-time job in Windhoek as a CEO of a company here. And Sankwasa says, no, the law says you must be within the jurisdiction where you were voted in. But for me, even if the law didn't say that, logically you ought to be on the ground. I mean, if I want to see my mayor this morning, open door policy, and the door is in Windhoek, like I wrote in my editorial recently, I mean, how do you serve people?
Yes. Very interesting question. I would use as my entry point what I told officials from the city of Windhoek about a week ago. The law says, in the context of them, it's like you must do your trade in the context of street vendors. You may not just sell anywhere. In terms that there are rules and regulations of the city of Windhoek. But I reminded them, it's like there's one particular case where Justice Mainga reminded the then permanent secretary of the Ministry of Health, saying that our constitution has propelled us, such a nice phrase, has propelled us from an era of authority to an era of justification. Meaning, it is not just enough to have the law on your side, but your actions must also be informed by what the Constitution in Article 18 says: lawfulness, fairness, and reasonableness. So coming back to the Omathia situation, yes, that person, strictly speaking, is outside the parameters of the law. But he's been doing it for however long. So the decision of the minister in this case would affect him. And administrative justice says, you cannot take a decision that affects me adversely without granting me an opportunity to state my case. And this is where the notion of the law comes in. The rule of law, Article 1 of our Constitution says Namibia is a constitutional democracy built on the foundations of the rule of law. So you don't just stand up just because you've got the authority, just because you've got the minister, and just because you've got the law on your side. You need to comply not just with the law, but your decisions must always be fair in the sense that you've followed a fair procedure. As I said, you've given the affected person an opportunity to state his or her case, and not even that. Your decision must also be reasonable under the circumstances. And so these are the kind of things that unfortunately our ministers must comply with. And I want to come back. Remember, I've mentioned the decision-making processes. The new administration, the new cabinet, seems to be very obsessed for wanting to get back the idea of the Midco saga. The law is clear that the minister and the executive does not have the power to indicate and to not to indicate, to dictate rather, that's the right word, to dictate to the Midco board in terms of who should be.
Individuals.
Yeah, exactly the case. And here they seem to be obsessed for wanting to get the former CEO back. What is so special about this person? Please take us into your confidence to tell us, because you don't have that power. So Rui is correct to say we are having laws in our country that needs to be to be implemented, and it is not just because you are the minister, you the cabinet, you the prime minister, you the president, and so you can dictate. That is unlawful. Yeah.
Speaking of SOEs, Rui, what we've seen also is the new administration, especially the Prime Minister, writing to some of these entities. I know he wrote a letter to Midco after the 400 cattle went missing. He wrote a letter to NIDA, which has been also in the news for naughty reasons lately, and others. And I think the Prime Minister is doing it. I've seen some people saying, "Oh, why should the Prime Minister at his level write through cabinet, secretary to cabinet, and who then forwards these things to these entities?" But this is exactly the point that John is making. To say, just because you sit in that chair, you are not absolved from following the channels. And if we are saying that the Midco, the cabinet doesn't have the right in terms of law to appoint, to nominate,
To dictate.
to dictate to the thing. So, what do you think of that approach that is taking, that sense of monitoring what's happening in the SOEs and saying to them, comrades, we need explanations?
You see, Toivo, before I attempt in answering that question, in order for us to make sense of where we are in terms of the mess of these SOEs, we need to understand the genesis of their creation. Why were they created in the first place? The whole idea behind SOEs, whether they are in the service industry or the commercial or economic industry, was to create a service to the general public and to contribute towards the country's national agenda. But at the same time, the intention of the powers that be in cahoots with the people that have become part and parcel of the board of directors, the CEO and senior managers of this parastatal, was also to loot. I'll be very blunt about it. It's to loot. Secondly, is also most of these SOEs, we have about 89 of these SOEs. Most of these SOEs are actually seen as a incubation center for black managers. Some of them wouldn't even qualify to be a manager in the private sector. So it's part of the broader patronage network. Toivo is my friend, where can I bring him in? John is my friend, where can I bring him in? So that is the fundamental problem with our SOEs. The other issue is that we have seen this fixation with creating more SOEs, more than that is necessary. And look at the ones that have fallen. RCC is a classical example in the construction industry. As a matter of fact, we understand that those people are still being paid salaries, but it does not exist, it does not provide a service at the moment. We look at Air Namibia. We look at the crisis that you've just mentioned at NIDA, MITCO. So instead of calling the CEOs, some of these parastatals that are governed in such a way that it actually relates more to wealth accumulation, instead of calling these people chief executive officers, we should actually call them chief embezzlement officers, because that is their intention from the get-go. It is to embezzle, to accumulate wealth, and the law does not apply in terms of how they ought to govern, in terms of the basic good governance principles. That's why you have interference from the political elite, because Toivo is coming from Okalongo. We've never had Mbaja as a CEO, for example. We need to be very ethnic conscious in terms of our appointments. Equity. But that should not replace competence. And that is why the chairperson of MITCO resigned. He realized that I cannot add value anymore because decisions are being imposed upon me from the political elite, but at the same time we are saying we want to transform the SOEs. So I will ask the question, is it really business unusual or is it business as usual?
Yeah, very good.
May I add?
Yeah, please, John.
As part of the media monitoring project that we had as under the Office of the Media Ombudsman, we authored a briefing paper on strong institutions. Remember, SDG 16.6 talks about strong institutions, but strong institutions in being institutionally strong, administratively strong, financially independent, and being accountable. And we've used the ECN, for example, as a case study, given the fact that the project dealt with elections. So we've used the ECN as a case study. And we found that in as much as the Constitution and the Electoral Act of 2014 provides for the ECN to be constitutionally independent, the practice on the ground shows that it is not administratively independent, it is not institutionally independent. In fact, the CEO of the ECN is listed as an executive, I don't want to use your word, a chief executive officer of the ministry of the government. So how can you be an independent institution, but the Public Service Act lists you as one of the the chief executive officer. So our problem is we've got institutions that are not strong institutions in the words of both the SDG 16, but also Vision 2063 of Africa, the vision that we have as strong institutions, and that for me should be where we need to go. It's building strong institutions and not the ones that Rui is talking about that are out there to self-enrich and all those kind of things.
Yeah, and just before we go on a short break, I think also you spoke about the CEO of ECN, the head of administration there, but I mean, you look at also the way the commissioners are appointed.
Exactly the point.
They are appointed, their names are recommended to the president,
Yes.
who must then make the final approval. I mean,
it's a good point, and maybe not even the ECN, because at least with the ECN, the commissioners, there's a semblance of openness and transparency. They are interviewed publicly,
yeah.
and it is Parliament really that is in charge of that. There's a selection committee, and Parliament organizes that, and Parliament recommends to the president.
Yeah.
With the ACC, it's a total different ball game.
Yeah.
It is the president that is in charge of the identification, the nomination, and even the recommendation to Parliament for the ACC. That is the problem with regard to the appointment of us. So the ACC is really the one that stands out here.
Yeah, thank you. We go for a very short break and return with my two guests.
Running a business isn't just about hitting the big milestones, it's also about handling the day-to-day. From equipping your office, to closing deals over lunch, to managing your team's expenses while they're on the go. Now, with the FNB Business Credit Card, you can handle everyday expenses with ease. Enjoy up to 44 days of interest-free credit, unlimited swipes, and real-time expense tracking, so you're always in control. Apply for an FNB Business Credit Card. Contact us today to get started. FNB, how can we help you?
We continue the show here with John Nakuta and Rui Tyitende. Now, John, I must still come back to you. So one of the things that has happened lately is these public entities obtaining legal opinions from the Attorney General primarily, and nobody respects what the Attorney General says. In the case of MIDCO that you just raised, Festus Mbandeka, when there was this debate whether cabinet has authority to nominate and dictate who must be a CEO there, he came out blatantly to Shimi, who solicited this opinion, to say cabinet does not have authority, not by the MIDCO Act, not by any other statute, for them to dictate that process. And they are ignoring him big time. We spoke earlier about ECN. ECN is sitting on a legal opinion of the Attorney General after Dr. Itula challenged that you cannot participate both as president and as a member of parliament in an election. You must choose one battle. ECN wrote to Mbandeka, got an opinion piece, legal opinion. To this day, they kept it from us, the actual stakeholders in this thing. What must be done with public, with the legal opinions of the Attorney General?
Well, legal opinion is just as the word indicates, it is just an opinion. Remember, you mentioned a very strong word, which is really very strong also in the context of administrative justice. It's like, yes, the entity empowered to take a decision wants to take a decision, so there's nothing that precludes them from obtaining an opinion. But that opinion should not just be willy-nilly followed. They must still apply their mind. So there's nothing wrong for the entity vested with the power. Yes, we've heard what the Attorney General said, but for one or the other reason, rightfully or wrongly so, we do not agree with his opinion. So not even technically, legally speaking, there's nothing wrong with them doing what they want to do
Outside the opinion of...
Yes, yeah. So in that case, there's really nothing wrong. But very interestingly, the legal opinion that they obtained with regard to what Dr. Itula wanted them to do. My beef with that, and I've raised it with them, is access to information requires you to say, okay, we've got this opinion from the Attorney General. This is what, I mean, you've got nothing to lose.
Yes.
In fact, there's the principles of access to information as issued by the African Commission on Human and People's Rights is saying public interest supersedes everything else. It's like, if you said it, it's like for us as the people that wants to know and that are concerned citizens, what can you lose by saying this is what we've been advised? But despite the advice, we think the contrary. Nothing to lose, but of course they don't agree. I told them you are very much wrong because you are infringing our right to know as citizens. But of course they don't agree also with what I've said. But yeah, it's a strong issue.
Yeah. Rui, a slightly different topic now. So people have been arrested at Namcor and other entities related to that scandal. What I find interesting in this whole thing is that the Prime Minister went to Twitter maybe 2 weeks ago or a week and a half, and he tweets that he met with the Director General of the ACC, maybe just to check how their operations are going and whatnot, and they ventured into some of the investigations that are going on. In the tweet by the Prime Minister, he says Namcor was one of the subjects that arose during that conversation with the ACC. That was prior to the arrests. A few days later, people are in handcuffs.
Yeah.
Is that an indication of an administration that is intolerant? Because, mind you, this Namcor investigation didn't start with the new administration. It's been going on for a long time. But the actions are now taking place under this administration. Is it a new administration? Is it business unusual in that sense?
Well, look, President Ndayitwa said that corruption will be treated like treason. Okay. But one can be forgiven for thinking that corruption or corrupt acts tend to take leave in Namibia on account of the indifference of the ACC. They act when it is politically convenient to do so, in my view. The same happened with the fish rod. Various media reports were out that, look, there's some malfeasance happening here in the fishing industry. The ACC came out and said, no, we don't find anything wrong. Those are administrative issues. Then there was this whole expose of the arrest. Then they started pounding. And it's like they were on leave, and then they are back on the very same issue. And they tend to contradict themselves most of the time, at least. Now, if the president is saying that corruption will be treated as treason, we should actually welcome it as the general public, because corruption actually erodes public confidence. It takes away from a child that ought to go to school because resources are being diverted for wealth accumulation purposes. But if the Prime Minister, we do not know the nature of the conversations that were held. If we had known what was actually said, one would have a better opinion, as to what actually transpired. But one can only deduce what happened. So if the president is saying it's business unusual, but at the same time, she also said that she will not pursue corruption cases that happened before her.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
That is troubling. Actually.
Yeah. What does that mean? Then you look at the various commissions of inquiry that have been done in Namibia. There are so many. GIPF is one of them. So the president is basically saying, I will not touch on that. It happened way before me. Now, with the Namcor issue, it also happened before her time, but the matter is now being pursued. Yeah. And the person that is in charge, third in charge of the country basically, is pursuing the matter with the Director General of this ACC. So what does that mean? Yeah. What can we deduce from all of these things that are currently transpiring? But I think as a public, we should not pursue matters because of the political allegiance that these people happen to find themselves. This is politics, in my view. And politics usually dictates the trajectory that state institutions will take. If it's another president in power, their priorities will shift. But I do not want acts of corruption only to be pursued based on your political allegiance to a particular candidate or a faction. That's troublesome. We should be very consistent in terms of how we apply the law.
Yeah.
The law is very clear. Just because we are not in the same camp, you are now my enemy and I will use institutions of the state to get rid of you. That's wrong.
Yeah. Is that what you think is happening here?
I think so.
You don't think...
I think the ACC knew already. They had sufficient evidence, but they did not act on it. In politics, there are no coincidences. Everything is choreographed. Everything is planned. You sit with information, but you only act on it at the right time, at the right place.
Yeah, that is a
That's tough.
that is a very interesting word. John, what did you make of? Do you think a precedence is being set here going forward? Because I mean, what we don't want is people getting arrested at one entity, then at another entity, people are doing the same, but they are not being pursued. Just in terms of your thoughts there.
Yeah, Rui reminds me of during the time of Thabo Mbeki in South Africa. Thabo, as good as he may be for some of us, has been accused for using state institutions to fight political battles. And that boomeranged and it exploded in his face. And I'm just saying that I hope our leaders would learn from such experiences. That you cannot use, because that would be an abuse of power. If it's true what Rui is saying, that state institutions is being used or are being used to fight political scores, to act and not to act because of who is involved, that is an abuse of power and that can be challenged. So in as much as one welcomes the fact that there seems to be now action, I hope it's for the right reasons. Because if it is done on the dictates, once again, on the dictates of an outside person, even in the person of the Prime Minister, the defense lawyers would have, they would win big time because it's malicious. You may not even have sufficient evidence, and whatever the case may be. So, and by so doing, you may just lose the case. So I hope it is not the case. But at the same time, I'm also saying maybe, and I really hope so, they've been spurred into action because of the mantra doing things in an unusual manner. And I rather hope that that would be the reason why we now see actions. And I would certainly, like anyone else, would welcome that now we see that this mantra of doing business unusual has rubbed off, even on an institution like the ACC, because all of us are saying, come on, why don't you act? There are so many cases, allegations of corrupt practices happening almost in every institution and in every sphere of the country. Why don't you act? So I really hope it is rather the business unusual mantra that has been spurring them to act now, as opposed to them being dictated to.
Yeah. Rui, I don't remember any major corruption scandal in our country that has not been covered in similar rhetoric. Fish rot, if you go to them now, they'll tell you we are being persecuted because of our allegiances or because of other people's political pursuits. The man, it's a man, the former councillor from Agahanja, Mr. Boyce, who is accused of raping his own daughter. He says, oh no, these are all politics. There are big political players in the background. That's why I have a difficulty believing that, because even when there's a clear trail of papers of how money was eaten, I mean, in the Namcor case, what you've seen, young boys. One of them is on the run. Why would you be on the run? Go hide in Angola, wherever. If you know, I mean, you leave your children, your business, your luxury home to be a fugitive just out of political fear, is because they ought to have something that happened.
Absolutely. You see, Toivo, all of these corrupt acts that have happened previously, now, and in the future, most of the time, these guys know exactly who is eating, where, but that information will not be weaponized until it is politically relevant to do so. That is my view. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not saying there are no corrupt acts.
Okay.
I'm saying it will be weaponized until the time is right to do so. These guys know each other's shenanigans. They know. They know. And I think that for as long as our overall culture of conspicuous consumption in Namibia continues, corruption will always be there. Whether it's a government cleaner, whether it's a director in the ministry, or whether it's a politician, corruption will always be there. For someone who's, for example, a cleaner, one would make the argument that it is a matter of survival, stealing toilet paper to go and sell in Katutura, for example. Then there's one that directly embezzles state funds that are maybe meant to build a school or a clinic. But the issue is corruption is corruption. It doesn't matter who perpetrates it. That should be the overall message that is being sent. So the application of the law in terms of how we deal with corruption should be applied consistently across the board. No favoritism whatsoever. My view is that you should always look at when there's a surge in corrupt activities being reported before an election and usually after an election. Just check. Historically, it has always been the case. That's because it is being weaponized to pursue political enemies that usually used to be political friends. Times have changed. And we always say that in politics, even 24 hours it's a long time. You know, it's quite a long time. And you should expect this kind of political battles, especially when it comes to dealing with the issues of corruption, to keep on playing itself out. Watch what will happen just before 2027, before the governing party's Congress, and immediately after. There will be smear campaigns. We've seen the smear campaigns against the former Minister of Finance just before the governing party's so-called POT, Electoral College, you know, and the guy is no longer a minister. Is it a coincidence? I don't believe in coincidences. So you need to understand the intricate details of what transpires in the governing party, because everything that happens in the governing party ultimately also plays itself out in the politics of state institutions, because you cannot have a clear dichotomy between the two. They are somehow interwoven. But the ACC, it came into existence during Tate Pohamba's time, 2005, 2006. Tate Noah has been at the helm of that institution since its birth. I hope it doesn't die with him. But if you look at the ACC as an institution, we've had stakeholder engagement with various ACC officials. They are telling us that they are under-resourced. The question is it intentional or not? You cannot say you are serious about dealing with corruption, but you do not avail the necessary material and financial and human resources to enable an institution that is so important like the ACC to be able to execute its mandate. Speak to the officials of the ACC. They will tell you, you know what, some are saying this is politics. Others are saying, no, it's favoritism within the institution itself. Because we also need to ask the question, when a dossier reaches the desk of NOAA, what does the law say in terms of who he can go after and who not to? So corruption not only in Namibia. If you look at countries like Nigeria, there was a former senior government official that said he was arrested because the dynamics at that particular point in time had changed. And he said that if I were to speak openly about corrupt activities that have been perpetrated by government officials, this entire government would collapse.
Yeah.
And just to paraphrase a good scholar, Prince, he said that, look, if we have to look at corruption as a whole, you know, and you look at the governing party and the whole patronage networks, state institutions, SOEs, offices and agencies. People talk about August 26, for example. If we consider them to be a university of corruption, then all of those that are implicated in corruption are its graduates.
yeah, thank you. John,
I would add to...
I hope your mic can still be...
Yeah. Can it be heard still? Okay.
Yeah, please.
I would add, but by only adding to the notion of strong institutions.
Yeah.
That is what we need. We don't need strong... In fact, while Rui was talking, I remember what the former president of the United Nations, when he was addressing, not United States, sorry, President Obama, was addressing the Ghanaian parliament once, and he said, Africa needs strong institutions, not strong men. That is what we need.
Yeah.
And how do we get our institutions like the ACC, the ECN, the Auditor General's Office, how do we get those institutions to be strong? By ensuring that they are independent in law and in practice, that they are administratively independent, that they are adequately funded, as you say, because how do you want them to fight, in the case of the ACC, corruption, and as Rui says, that you are not funding them adequately. How do you get an institution like the ECN to begin to do the kind of things that we as citizens want them to do, but you don't fund them? So it is a question of building strong institutions and not strong men and women.
No, absolutely. Just on that point, Toivo, you see, there's always the narrative or the argument that when it comes to capacitating key state institutions like the ACC, the issue of financial resources always comes up. And I don't think that is the problem. I think the problem is the political will. Because how do you explain that government would always procure luxury vehicles? It's not a priority. I mean, if I were the president, I would actually say, each and every minister, you buy your own car, you get a salary the way we do. You go and buy your own car, or everyone will simply get a dangi pochwana. All of you, whether you want to or not, it will not prevent you from executing your ministerial mandate. The resources are in abundance. It's only our priorities. Our priorities. Should we get Land Cruisers, V8s and Mercedes-Benzes, or do we fund key institutions like the ACC?
What if consistency is the new buzzword within the corridors of ACC, what should be their next stop? The Minister of Health? Because we saw the young Minister of Health going to ACC, reporting some issues there, medicine being smuggled into the country and finding their way into the government medical stores. That's very, very dangerous. Because now we don't know what is actually entering our bodies as a result of what is painted as secure medicine supplied by the state. That's very, very dangerous. If Joba Mpanda did not make noise about what transpired recently with those malaria drugs, a lot of people will be consuming them now, and they've not been registered with the medical council, and therefore their safety, maybe we are not technical people, but I'm already concerned about the safety of that medicine. But it was stocked up in the medical stores. Procurement there is a problem. People are stealing millions of dollars that ought to go and stock up clinics is being used to pay middlemen and stuff like that. Do you think we must act urgently on that?
Sure. I think 3, 4, 5 years ago, I can't recall the exact date, I penned an article in the Namibian titled Corruption as Terrorism. And the argument that I made then was that if you look at the definition of terrorism, how it is defined, the Prevention and Combating of Terrorist Activities Act, is that it's any activity that violates, the natural resources of the country, the people. People always tend to think of terrorism in hardcore sense, someone walking into parliament with a suicide vest or an AK-47 starts shooting up people. But what has happened is actually a form of social and economic terrorism as well, because people can die in the process, even though it's not with the barrel of a gun. That's I don't know how morally these people are still in these positions. If we were a serious country, they would have been paraded. In China, they would have been hanged. Personally, I would have wanted them to be hanged as well, but I can't because the constitution does not allow for that. But how do you consciously do something like that by drugging our people with medicine that is expired, that is not fit for human consumption? Because they wouldn't take that medicine. And you see, in the beginning, the Minister of Health said that senior government officials would be allowed to make use of public health facilities.
Yeah.
That's a dream. It won't happen. Tutura Hospital, exactly. Those are human abattoirs. No one would go there, Toivo. Even you wouldn't want to go there. So these guys will not. They will go to Lady Pohamba, they will go to Mediclinic, because they know exactly the kind of mess that permeates in these state health facilities. Their kids don't go there. Their wives don't go there. Their Kamborotos don't go there. No one goes there in the immediate circle of friends. So these problems will persist until we legally actually compel them to make use of these facilities that they subject ordinary citizens to utilize.
Yeah. I don't know also if legally you can tell someone to go to a particular hospital. But I suppose what you can do in that case is to say the medical aid, the state medical aid must be, the services coming from those medical aid must be offered by state hospitals. But again, I think there's and this is what I have a problem with, because, government makes these pronouncements, but I just find them troubling, because legally I don't think you can compel anyone to say, you go to that hospital instead of the other one. Exactly. But I understand the principle to say, look, we want to really bring the service here so that people, even out of their own will, can go there.
But John, you see, Toivo, just to interject there.
Yeah.
You see, political office bearers, no one compels them to run for public office. No one does that.
Yeah.
They come out and say, vote for me, appoint me. I think I'm the best candidate to execute this public service delivery to the Namibian public. No one comes to them. Yeah. Political parties canvassing for support across the country. So the mindset that we have in this country, not only Namibia but elsewhere in any post-colonial African state, is that the political elite are the bosses of the masses. It's the other way around. They campaign. They tell us that they will be able to govern better than anyone else. No one goes and look for them under a stone or wherever, their villages or wherever they come from. They tell the people that I'm the best person for this job. So we need to stop that mentality that these people are actually doing us a favor. They are using taxpayers' money. They don't take this money from their unit trust to govern the affairs of the state. It's public funds.
John, you have the last throw of the dice. I wanted you to just quickly and really briefly on the issue. I mean, all these issues that we've seen now lately. August 26, this entity, who is this entity? We are told, Namibian Sun reports reported this week anyways, that this entity is not even subject to being audited by the Auditor General, because they've created it under the Company Act and not an Act of Parliament, and therefore the Auditor General doesn't have authority over that. So we don't know what's happening there. Even there are subsidiaries that make shoes. We are told, no, you can't audit them for security reasons. What kind of nonsense is that?
You're using a very good word. Yesterday we had interviews, and someone during the interview used a very beautiful phrase, that sunlight is the best disinfector. You were with me in that interview. Yes. It was so. And so when it comes to August 26, for me, the veil that is used normally so as to keep whatever they are doing in secret and whatever, is this mantra of national security. But we've got case law in this country in a matter that involve the National Intelligence Service, in a matter between one of your former journalists when he was still working at the Patriot, where they wanted to report on alleged corrupt practices happening within the National National Intelligence Service. Yeah. And the court said national security cannot be used as a veil to cover up for corrupt practices. And here, coming back to my very first point, access to information, whistleblower protection legislation, which Meme Netumbo Ndaitwa's administration must make a point to really begin to implement, because only then will people begin to challenge this so-called secrecy, this veil under which August 26 is happening. That is, so we need the laws to be implemented, and then we will get to find out what really is happening here. Because like you, I believe there's a lot of corrupt practices happening there, and they are using national security as an scapegoat and as a escape route, not to inform us what is really happening.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure having both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, wonderful. That is John Nakuta and Rui Tyitende engaging us tonight on the agenda. Thank you for watching.